Welcome back to ILTV on the Hour. I'm Devo Klein coming to you live from Israel with all of the top headlines coming out of the region. It's currently 7 a.m. in New York and 2 p.m. here in Israel. These are all of the latest developments. Senator Lindsey Graham has died at the age of 71. The late senator's office confirmed early this morning that Graham had passed from, quote, a brief and sudden illness, though new unconfirmed reports suggest that emergency services responded to a cardiac arrest call in his home. Graham was a staunch supporter of Israel and the Jewish state, with the Republican South Carolina senator vouching for U.S.-Israel ties and protecting the Jewish community in the United States. Responding to the news, Prime Minister Netanyahu tweeted, quote, Sarah and I grieve with the American people over the loss of our dear friend, Senator Lindsey Graham. The Prime Minister sent well wishes to the family and eulogized what he called Israel's strongest friend. Since then, also the Israeli President Isaac Herzog has also tweeted in memory of the late Senator. Graham will forever be remembered as one of the strongest voices for Israel and the Jewish people in the United States Senate. May his memory forever be a blessing. And meanwhile, as the shockwaves of Graham's death settle down, the conflict between the United States and the Islamic regime in Iran has escalated sharply over the weekend, with hostilities exchanged across Gulf countries and in the Strait of Hormuz. The exchange of fire began when regime forces attacked yet another commercial shipping vessel in the strait, prompting the United States to unleash widespread airstrikes on multiple IRGC targets, including missile and drone sites, naval assets, ammunition depots, communication networks, and coastal surveillance positions. According to U.S. Central Command, approximately 140 targets were hit in the overnight operations. This morning, the regime is responding. Sirens have sounded across the Gulf, with the regime claiming it targeted U.S.-linked military facilities with missile and drone attacks. In Qatar, Jordan, and Kuwait, sirens also sounded in the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. U.S. War Secretary Pete Hegseth said Iran had, quote, made a poor choice and vowed that the United States would continue to degrade Tehran's military capabilities and protect freedom of navigation despite continued diplomatic contacts through Oman. The Strait of Hormuz is now a vital artery for global energy supplies, being closed once again, and now a focal point of a rapidly escalating confrontation that threatens to draw the entire region deeper into this conflict. But while the military acts overseas, trouble at home base continues, with new security threats facing U.S. President Donald Trump continuing to mount. U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee has confirmed reports that Israeli intelligence recently warned Washington of what he called, quote, a very specific plot designed to kill President Trump. The confirmation follows a Wall Street Journal report that Trump returned from the NATO summit in Turkey aboard an older Air Force One after U.S. officials received the Israeli warning. Huckabee declined to say whether the intelligence directly prompted the change of aircraft, while some U.S. officials told the Journal they questioned the credibility of the threat. Iranian rhetoric, meanwhile, has become increasingly aggressive. A newspaper affiliated with the Tehran municipality published a propaganda hit list featuring AI-generated images of Trump, Netanyahu, and other American, Israeli, and even European leaders with targets drawn on their heads. We can pull up those images for you very, very soon. But a new form of propaganda right there on your screens now, being published from Tehran amid negotiations, but also amid escalations. Now, the publication followed a message attributed to Iran's acting leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, promising that revenge for his father's death must come soon. Trump responded with his sharpest warning yet, saying that the United States would, quote, completely decimate and destroy Iran if it attempts to assassinate him. And now, before we move on, a quick word from our partners. 75 years ago, a bold idea helped build a nation. Since then, Israel Bonds has helped power growth, innovation, and resilience across Israel. Generation after generation, investors have turned values into action. Now, it's your turn to be a part of the next chapter. Celebrate 75 years of Israel Bonds. Invest today at israelbonds.com. Joining me now to discuss these latest developments and more is our panel of experts for today. I'm pleased to welcome to the show Brigadier General in the Reserves Relik Shafir, a former Air Force Base commander, and Ambassador Dani Ayalon, chairman of Silver Road Capital Group. Thank you both so much for being with us today. Just to start, Pete Hegseth has said some pretty threatening messages saying that Iran has made a grave mistake and retaliations have already come. But it looks like the regime is not getting the message as of now. How dire does the situation in the Strait of Hormuz need to be for the United States to return to full-scale war? Or will Trump rather ride this tit-for-tat phase out as long as possible? Ambassador Ayalon, what's your analysis of the current situation between the United States and the Islamic regime?
Yes, I think we are long past the rhetoric's exchange, which amounts to nothing. Actually, the Iranians' current boldness, which ever increases, I think, is a result of no real and serious actions by the United States. And the Iranians understand and also assess, and probably not wrongly so, that there is no appetite by President Trump and his administration to resume major operations, mostly because of pressure at home, the upcoming midterm elections in November. And we have seen that the Iranians are, experts at just playing brinkmanship, and they do it ever more aggressively. So in order to really stop it, I think deterrence should be, I would say, built on. And the only way to build on new deterrence is by hurting the Iranians where it really counts. That it means infrastructures like bridges and maybe even energy facilities.
Mm-hmm. And, Relik, do you agree with Ambassador Ayalon's assessment? Also, what can you add about the state of the U.S. military capabilities in the region? Are the regime attacks on American assets in the Gulf really hurting the U.S. military, or are they more symbolic at this point?
Obviously, they do hurt the U.S. interests and bases in the area, but let's not be swayed by this fact, because most of the power that the U.S. has is from aircraft carriers, the Fifth and part of the Sixth Fleet, and their abilities to launch attacks on Iran is not interfered with seriously. So it's a decision by the United States. How much do they want to beat up on Iran? And is it really necessary to go for infrastructure and darken Isfahan and Tehran in order to bring the point home to most of the people who, except for their dire economic situation, are not seeing the war scenes themselves. The number of Iranians that lost their lives during this war is pretty low, not to speak of the number of Americans. I think it's about 14. And so both sides have not lost a lot if you do a body count. If you do an infrastructure count, well, the Iranians have promised to attack refineries and energy infrastructure in the neighboring countries housing American interests and military. So the Americans have to think whether they want to go that manner, because it's a full-fledged war in that case, with a lot of repercussions on all the countries around. That doesn't seem to be part of what the U.S. is looking for. So it'll probably stay around the Bandar Abbas and along the coast, trying to hit targets that fire or stop the vessels at the Strait of Hormuz. So I wouldn't say that the situation is dire at this time, and they're still playing small war games in order to improve their political situation towards an agreement. That may continue until November. I don't think the United States is eager, or Trump is eager, to get to a full-scale war with the upcoming elections. So I think this will continue on and off for the next couple of months.
Hmm. I mean, unfortunately so, but I'm curious, where does that leave the Gulf states at this point? They're the ones who are currently suffering most of the attacks from the Islamic regime. I mean, not don't want to open my mouth and say, harsh things, but Israel hasn't really been the target of all of the recent escalations that we've been experiencing in recent weeks. Israel's actually been relatively quiet. Now, when it comes to the regime attacking Israel clearly has a shared goal with the United States to, decimate the regime and to get rid of their nuclear program. When it comes to the Gulf states, although some of them may have similar interests, there's really a question here of what is it. Is the Islamic regime attacks on the Gulf states potentially hurting their relationship with the United States, or perhaps any prospects for any new Abraham Accords to be signed, considering how hostile the regime is being toward the Gulf countries? At what point do they draw a line and say, okay, we're done with this, we don't want to fight with Iran anymore? Ambassador Ayalon, do you think that such a situation could end up happening?
Yes, theoretically, yes, Devo. I would say about the Gulf states, they are in a very abysmal situation. It's not
Hmm.
that they are without any military capabilities, defense and also offensive, but they are very much afraid of using it, and that much to the dismay and disappointment of the United States, that has invested billions of dollars and sold billions of dollars of military equipment to the Saudis
Okay.
mainly, but to other countries as well, which are on the receiving side of the blows from Iran, and they are not really doing anything. And this just encourages Iran to continue. I don't think it's a by coincidence that the Iranians are not targeting Israel every so often, because they know they will get retaliation in a massive way. And this is not the case of the other Gulf countries. I would say in general, this tit for tat between the United States and Iran is playing to the hands of Iran. First of all, at home, this regime, very, very radical and ruthless regime, is getting more and more prestige, at least among the supporters of this regime, which are a minority of the Iranian population. But still, there is no meltdown, quite the contrary, when it comes to the regime supporters. And for the United States, this is just politically very hurting. So in my mind, it would be better for the United States, instead of this tit for tat and just constant uh, bleeding politically and militarily, to have even a shorter period of time, but in a very intensive way. At the end of the day, I think the only solution to the region and beyond would be the regime replacement. But at this point, the regime is getting stronger.
And it also doesn't go to say that it's this whole tit for tat phase is also quite hurting Israel in this case scenario. And I think you make an interesting point that actually the regime is well aware that it's not attacking Israel because they know that retaliation will come. But there's a big military question here. Is the Israeli military, especially the Israeli Air Force, Relic, if you can answer this one, is it in the same position that we were before? Obviously, the precision, the dominance that the Israeli Air Force, showed us in the beginnings of Operation Rising Lion and Roaring Lion and previous. So it's been quite incredible to watch, at least from the sidelines. Can we execute similar types of operations now today? Are we at the same capacity, and could it hurt Israel or actually benefit Israel if we were to join a sort of larger escalation? Relic, what do you think?
Well, it really depends on if you run this scenario uh, fast forward, where are we going to end up? Because obviously the Air Force can continue what it did beforehand. And I think we're belittling the United States capability to deploy its Air Force. It hasn't flown the B-2s with the heavy bunker busters since that famous raid last year. And the Israeli Air Force really is constrained in its targeting by the United States, such as energies, refineries, etc. So It'll just add to the U.S. Air Force and Navy capabilities in that area. But it would also bring missiles to Israel. It'll also allow Israel to hit Hezbollah much stronger. But having said that, this will actually collapse the Israel-Lebanon conversations. And I fear that the Abraham Accords um, have all but being dismantled because the uh, um, the Gulf states do not see any upside with the agreements with Israel, with the United States not committing to continuing into this war into to its very end, which means the collapse of the Iranian regime. So if they look at history, starting from Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan, where the United States had shown very limited capabilities in completing the missions it went out to do, they know that the Americans will not put a foot on the ground. They're not able to do it otherwise. And so they haven't seen any signals that once this is over in one way or another, Iran, even if they agree to, let's say, stop their nuclear program, will not hurt them once the United States loses interest in the area. And the dismantling of Iran is even worse because by that time there could be clandestine terror operations in their areas, which would actually destroy a lot of the efforts to modernize the area, to bring prosperity to the Gulf area. So they're in a dire situation because the United States will not commit to their defense fully. One thing the United States could do are some boots on the ground in the Bandar Abbas area or the Harj Island to show their resoluteness. It'll cost them some lives of Americans on the ground, and that's why I don't think it'll happen before the November elections.
Mm-hmm. But say that boots do end up making it on the ground in Iran, aren't they at a significant disadvantage? It's been quite clear that any military operations inside of Iran wouldn't take place because of the the topography, the geography, the size of the country, and that would just not happen. Do you think, Relic, that there could be a possibility for a minimal type of operation on the ground?
Sure, as I just mentioned, the Bandar Abbas area that houses missiles and some boats that actually fire those drones at the vessels. So a limited area takeover. The Iranian army just can't rush over to that area, and there's the air supremacy will allow it to be maintained in a closed area rather than all over Iran. Nobody's going to go all over Iran. Or the Harj Island, which can be overtaken quite easily. But there will be a body count there for Americans, and that's why it won't happen before November. And I'm sure if they do this, the Americans, then this may convince the Gulf states that they put their money where their mouth is.
Hmm. Interesting. And, Donnie, coming back to you, Prime Minister Netanyahu, he's actually expected to meet President Trump in the coming weeks. What do you anticipate the agenda to be focusing on? Could we maybe be heading towards some big news when it comes to the Iran front, or do you think there's maybe other topics on their mind?
No, I think mostly it will be Iran on two issues. Iran, of course, is the nuclear file. The Iranians were managed because of American weakness or lesser skills of negotiations. Trump even himself said that the Iranians are better negotiators and fighters. But the fact that they delinked the nuclear issue with the Hormuz, that gives them a lot of time to procrastinate and cheat. So I think this will be high on Netanyahu's agenda. The second thing is, just as they decoupled these issues of Hormuz, the Straits, and the nuclear, they did the opposite with Lebanon. And basically, they linked Lebanon to the war with Iran, thus limiting Israeli operation in Lebanon. So I'm sure this will be the second issue that will be discussed, along with, I'm sure, and really General Shafir would be better than me to, I would say, to compose a list of requirements that the military needs. Some were depleted, and I'm sure that will be also high on the agenda.
Alex, comments on that if you have a nice list to give us about the military.
Well, with all due respect, I don't think this is something to discuss over the media, to show where we're weaker or stronger. But I don't think that Israel has a problem withstanding Iranians shooting ballistic missiles at us. And I think they are working in the Gulf area in order for us not to make a move in Lebanon, as if the Lebanese file is more or less closed in the sense that Hezbollah will not give up its firearms or strengths, and so they don't want to shake that area, which has almost been closed as they perceive it. So I think they'd be much better off hitting the Gulf states and putting pressure through them on the United States rather than Israel.
Interesting. Now, one final question, our topic really that I wanted to discuss before we wrap up. Following the unfortunate death of Senator Lindsey Graham, there's been a lot of talk, mostly on social media, Twitter, X, and etc., about potentially investigating an Iranian connection here, considering how sharp the rhetoric coming out of the Islamic regime has been when it comes to not just Donald Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, but many other U.S., Israeli, even European leaders, officials, people involved. The poster that we aired earlier, Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar on there for some reason. It's very odd the way that they're sort of painting this picture that the Israeli and American leadership is a target for them. Is there anything to investigate here, an Iranian link to the quite sudden and quite tragic death of Senator Lindsey Graham? Ambassador Ayalon, what do you think?
Well, I think that at this point we should not exclude any possibility, certainly following the Iranians' threats. And also we know the extensive net of terror that they deploy around the world, not just here in the region, but also in Europe, in Latin America. I don't know. I'm sure that the Americans will perform an autopsy on the Senator Lindsey Graham. I can tell you, it's a really loss. He was a staunch friend of Israel. He was a great American. I have known him personally, and it will be very, very hard to replace him.
Do you think that there is a figure that can step in and be the voice for the Jewish people in the U.S. Senate, quite like Graham?
Well, at this point, I think unfortunately, they are not in large numbers as we used to in the past. For instance, Senator Lindsey and the late Senator Joe Lieberman, they reached over the aisle. One was Democrat, the other one was Republican, and they were just working day and night for Israel's security and for bolstering the U.S.-American relationship, knowing and understanding that a strong Israel is an interest, a vital interest of the United States. I hope many that are now on the second, third row will step up to the plate.
And Relic, what are your thoughts on the, potential Iranian connection, the conspiracies swirling around? Do you subscribe to them or not?
No, I think it's overstretched. He had a heart problem prior to this, and probably this is what took his life, his unfortunate death. And I wouldn't try to mess around with all these stories and trying to connect the different dots. Let's leave that to um, the fake news makers rather than the straight media.
And also relic to the intelligence agencies.
Yeah,
Right. It's
sure.
at this point it is just speculation, but there is a really, interesting topic here considering the like I said, the rhetoric coming out of the Islamic regime, and we cannot ignore the past attempts to assassinate the American president Donald Trump. Also in that item that I read earlier of the new information being released by U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee about intelligence that helped foil potential attacks. We've just had another foiled attack at the the White House UFC event. There have been multiple attempts on Donald Trump's life. Is that something that Israel or the United States should start keeping an eye out for? Is there a relic? Do you think that there's a real threat here, whether we're speculating or not, and whether Iran is essentially connected to this, to the death of Graham? Is there a reason to be worried?
I think we should definitely separate between barking dogs or speaking and doing. Terrorists usually, or acts like this, are usually done undercover, under the table, which would be undiscernible to as much as possible, and not straight out in the open. So I would say that this is part of the rhetoric, is part of the political game, and more so as we advance with the postmodern world, and the actual actions on the ground are usually under the ground or undercover. So I wouldn't connect those two and wouldn't take them seriously. Otherwise, we just lose connection with reality. So we should watch out not to be swayed.
Yeah, words from the wise, and I think a nice way to wrap up this panel for today. It is unfortunately at this point just speculation. We'll just have to follow the developments and see what transpires. But I want to thank you both so much for coming on ILTV on the Hour. Relic Shafir, Dani Ayalon, thank you both so much for your time and for your analysis today.
Thank you.
And now, for our viewers who know ILTV on the Hour very well, we like to finish with a positive story. And this is one that you definitely don't want to miss. Now, the Israeli under-20 national basketball team, the female under-20 national basketball team, has made history in the FIBA Eurobasket Games, beating Belgium in a scorcher semifinal and advancing to the grand final for the first time in history. The blue and white team has become the breakthrough performance at the tournament, currently taking place in Lithuania, beating tournament favorite Belgium in the semifinals for a final score of 78-69. So quite a close game, but at the end of it all, the Israeli team ended up victorious. They extended a stunning run that included wins over Croatia, a host nation, Lithuania, of course, Hungary, and Poland. Now, leading the way is tournament standout Gal Raviv, who has already emerged as one of the best U20 players in Europe. Raviv scored 35 points against Lithuania, 33 against Spain, and she's already established herself as a leading MVP candidate for this tournament. So we will stay tuned to see what happens with that. Now, in the semifinal, Maayan Cohen, she put on a shooting clinic, scoring 26 points while tying the tournament record with 8 3-pointers in one game, as Israel delivered its biggest win yet. Now, just one game remains. Tonight, taking place, Israel takes on France with a chance to win its first ever under-20 Women's European Championship, an historic opportunity that reflects the rapid rise of women's basketball in Israel and a bright future for the next generations of Israeli athletes. Good luck to the blue and white team. We'll be tuning in to see what happens. But that is a wrap for this edition of ILTV on the Hour, broadcasting live from Israel and the heart of the Middle East. Scan the QR code that's on your screens for more. But in the meantime, I'm Devo Klein. I want to thank you all so much for watching us today, and I hope to see you again very soon.